Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back, Uzma. Thank you so much for being with us on a very important subject. I mean, when we talk of corporate culture and we speak of change, this is something that's very close to everyone's heart. And I'm very glad to tell you that in Pakistan, organizations are becoming aware of how important culture is in order to achieve whatever strategies and plans and objectives they want to. तो इस सिलसिले में there are lots of views people have, and now that you are based in the UK for some years and you've worked with organizations across the world, it would be very helpful if you can share with us the model that you adopt in order to understand culture and why you think it's important, what it is. ये भी बहुत ज़रूरी है. पहले तो उसी से शुरू कर लेते हैं और फिर बताइएगा कि why it is important and the kind of approach you take to it, because जब आप किसी भी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन से मिलती हैं, जाहिर सी बात है, you want to understand where they are and where they want to be. तो वो approach जो है, because it's such a nebulous area, I thought that your insights and perspectives will enrich our viewers. So I would like you to please enlighten us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kamran. To answer your question, I mean, it's a broad question. It's a very heavy loaded question about what culture is and how it manifests and how do we assess it. I think it will be a good idea if we first look at what industry experts say about organizational culture. So I'll share a few slides with you. Let me know when you can see them.
Sure.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, okay.
So for this session today, I've picked up the definition of organizational culture by Edgar Schein, who is considered to be an authority on the subject of organizational development and culture. He is a professor emeritus with MIT School of Management, also an established consultant and an accomplished writer of many books. He says that organizational culture is a set of assumptions and beliefs shared by people in the organization that operate unconsciously in a taken for granted fashion. He also suggests that there are three layers of culture that exist in every organization. First one is values. We all are familiar with company values. They are explicit expression of cultural traits that businesses identify with. These are the cultural traits that businesses want to be known for. Like I said, they are explicit and they are all over they are posted across the offices and company intranet sites, etc. So they're visible to everyone. The second layer is behaviors. This is our day-to-day. How do we operate on a day-to-day basis? How do we make decisions? How do we react to situations? How do we take challenges? So it's all about our transactions with people inside and outside of the business. And the third area is taken for granted assumption. So this is the fundamental thing. This is the thing which is not so obvious, but this actually drives behavior in organizations. So this sits at the core of cultural paradigm of any company. These are basically based on a collective sense of learning based on what works in organization and what not. We'll look at it in a detail in a bit. So now I would like to elaborate on what we've seen and said so far through this visual of an iceberg. We all know what iceberg is. What we see at the top of the iceberg is just the tip of the whole formation. The major chunk actually sits beneath. And same is true for cultures. We talked about espoused values. We know this is an explicit expression of what businesses want to be. I'll just give you an example of banks in early 2000s. They had a value of careful risk management. But what we saw, that bank actually indulged in highly risky lending, which resulted in financial crunch in 2008. What we see in organization, that values are not normally reflected through behaviors. So definitely it makes it important for us to look beyond values to understand culture in organizations. The second thing, we talked about behaviors. Again, I'll give you an example of a company, let's say, facing some decline on their sales. And there are people in the sales team who are competing with each other, and they're not working in a team environment, or in a team in the form of a team. So why is that? If, like, despite of the values that company may have, of collaboration or teamwork, but it's still the behavior is is not matching with the values. So why is that? What is the reason behind those behaviors? That is very important to understand. So it means that behavior and espoused values and formal artifacts that we see in organization, which exist on the surface, they're not enough. They don't give us the whole picture. It's more than that. And that is what is the underlying shared tacit assumptions that drive behavior. And that is the collective sense of learning that people, after working in the organization, they come to realize that yes, this works and this doesn't work. And these are, by the way, the unwritten rules. These are the norms. They're not documented anywhere. It's a huge subject, of course, but I think now you'll be able to appreciate what Edgar Schein defined in his definition of organizational culture. That's a set of shared assumptions and beliefs that are shared by people. So it's basically these taken for granted values which majorly constitute, or rather contribute towards the cultural paradigm of any organization. So I would like to stop here and come back to the discussion. So
Yes.
yes, Kamran.
तो आप ये बताएं कि this is quite interesting that you have mentioned the fact that the espoused values are not often seen to be lived, and as a result, organizations either lose credibility or sales and drop in revenue, and indeed they even lose talent at times because what is said and what is done are in contrast. So, what is your experience with regards to this dissonance? And do you feel that organizations can, at some stage, evolve to a level where they are congruent, aligned with their stated beliefs and values?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a lot of cultural awareness now in the business world that we see, especially in the West. People are like realizing and appreciating that culture plays a key role in the performance of the business, performance of the organization, and that it acts like, it's like tendons and ligaments that hold the body together and allows it to be functional and healthier. So culture plays the same role. It allows you to execute business strategy. And now it is seen as part of a strategy.
Okay.
Because if there is any change in business strategy, then without addressing or aligning culture, you can not reap the benefits, or you cannot actually deliver the strategy. I can give you an example of digital transformation happening all around. So if a business realizes that they are lagging behind because of the lack of use of digital platforms, that's a strategic change, basically.
Mm-hmm.
and they cannot maximize the benefits of digital transformation without making their people embrace and adopt digitization fully, you know, because people are used to working in silos. They are not used to working on an integrated digital platforms. So there are cultural barriers, there are mental barriers. People are not used to think of or feel comfortable with digital ways of doing things. Let's put it this way. So I can quote here a survey conducted by McKinsey some time back around what makes digital transformation a success, and they found out cultural barriers being on the top.
Right. So you mentioned that when you um, commence any intervention with a client, you have certain approaches in order to understand the change readiness of the organization, what culture they're at this point. What is your approach to commencing an assignment with any client who's wanting to achieve the kind of fitness that is needed to um, become much more agile and customer responsive?
So you see, of course, we have at Magna People Change, we have our methodology around culture change or transformational change management. Then, so the first and foremost step for us is to analyze the change, to analyze what we are trying to achieve, basically,
Mhm.
through a change. So the first and foremost thing is to analyze. And then we carry out assessments around change impacts on the business. We carry out assessments around cultural assessments and operational readiness assessments, all of those assessments in that analyze phase. Then we design the future state for business. It could be designing of a culture for the business if it's
Yeah.
if it's a culture change. So then we design culture and design future state and ways of doing things, and then we move on to mobilizing that change. And that consists of developing effective communication plans and building a network change agency, including everyone in the organization at all levels,
Mhm.
giving them roles of like change champion or change agents or change sponsor, etc., etc. And then we embed or harness culture or change. Then we reinforce that change with, you know, having long-lasting and what should I say, conducive um, infrastructure and working model, and then we evaluate our success. So it's the whole methodology that we adopt.
Mhm.
But if you particularly talk about culture, then of course the first and foremost step is to take the stock of existing culture, to understand existing culture, to assess it, and then design the future state of culture, the aspired behaviors that we want to harness in our business, and then, you know, analyze the gap between the two and address it through the methodology that I just shared with you.
Wonderful. So, this being our first episode has given us a good sense of what is culture, why it's important, and the kind of um, achieve results that organizations can achieve when they focus on strategy and culture and do not ignore it. So the question that I have now is that going forward, I believe where there'll be at least 5 more episodes. What is the next topic that you would like to share with us at that point?
I think in our next topic, we can talk about how to assess cultures
Yes,
and how to uncover the underlying shared tacit underlying assumptions
right.
to improve measurably. I
Right.
think
Now,
that
this is a pretty extensive exercise. So, for example, if there's an organization with 5 or 6 thousand people spread all across Pakistan, how would one be able to do it using technology as well as some on-ground support? It's likely to be quite comprehensive, and language and other means could come into play because with COVID. it's very hard sometimes to get focus groups and vertical slice meetings in a physical setting. So, how do you foresee an organization that wants to, become leaner, more agile, much more responsive? If they want to bring that change in these circumstances, the exercise that you're proposing, how long is it likely to take for you to get a sense of, and for the organization to get a sense of where they are and where they need to be, involving the major players in the system?
Yeah, definitely, it's going to be a bespoke exercise, but the approach that we have is a hybrid approach, given the circumstances that we all are faced with due to COVID. So we have a we offer insights gathering sessions, which are online as well as face to face if required and if it allows us. We also use technology into our insights gathering sessions. So there are AI driven, artificial intelligence driven insights gathering session as well. Depending on the size and scope of the program, we use multiple approaches.
Wonderful.
So yes,
So you're going
I
to
think.
tell us more about it next time we meet, yes?
Sure, sure. Yeah, we'll talk about how do we really assess culture, like I said, in our ongoing
Yeah.
episodes.
So those listening are requested to kindly post any questions that have emerged as a result of this conversation I was having with Uzma Aitqad. Her email address as well as her website is mentioned below. She can also be reached on LinkedIn. So I'm very glad that you were able to make this time, Uzma, and I
Thank you.
look forward to seeing you next fortnight.